January 30th, 1943. 21,000 feet over Berlin. Snowflakes whip across the nose cone like tracer rounds. The Mosquito bomber roars eastward through the freezing German night, twin Merlin engines howling above a silent continent. Below, Berlin prepares for yet another air raid warning. But no sirens have sounded yet. The radar stations haven't even seen it coming. In the cockpit of Mosquito DZ-413, Flight Lieutenant Tony Morgan adjusts his oxygen mask. Beside him, Navigator Sergeant Colin Blakely is hunched over the maps, red pencil scrawling new bearings as their high-speed ghost ship approaches the heart of the Reich. The target, the Haus des Rundfunks, Nazi Germany's largest radio station, preparing to broadcast a speech commemorating the 10th anniversary of Hitler's rise to power. Morgan glances down. No flak yet. No fighters. Just the cold, shimmering void beneath them, and the sudden glow of Berlin. The Mosquito isn't supposed to be here. Not like this. It's made of wood. No armor. No guns. Just 2 crewmen and 4 500-pound bombs. It was mocked by German fighter pilots before it ever flew. A wooden toy, they said. It'll burn before it lands. But they were wrong. The wooden wonder slices through cloud like a stiletto. At this altitude and speed, nearly 380 mph, it outruns the Luftwaffe's finest interceptors. Below, the city's defenses scramble. Searchlights flicker on. Anti-aircraft crews curse and swing their guns too late. The Mosquito is already past them, already banking west. Behind it, the radio station vanishes in a pillar of flame. 2 minutes later, the crew listens on the emergency frequency. Silence. No speech. No applause. Just static. Mission accomplished. No losses. This was not the first Mosquito raid on Berlin, and it would not be the last. But tonight, something changed. Something shifted. Not in the skies, but in the minds of the Reich's defenders. The wooden bomber wasn't just fast. It was untouchable, uninterceptable, unstoppable. And from this night forward, Luftwaffe pilots would never again laugh at the Mosquito. 3 years earlier, the Mosquito had almost died on the drawing board. In 1939, British engineer Geoffrey de Havilland made a radical proposal. Build a high-speed bomber almost entirely out of wood, with no defensive guns. The Air Ministry was skeptical, borderline hostile. No armor, no armament? That's suicide. The conventional wisdom was clear. Bombers needed gunners, turrets, and bristling 303s to survive. But de Havilland was stubborn. He argued that speed, outright velocity, could be its own defense. If a bomber could fly faster than enemy fighters, it wouldn't need to fight at all. It could slip through enemy defenses like a shadow, strike, and vanish before the enemy even took to the air. The idea was dismissed, mocked. One official reportedly said, "The only wood I want in a bomber is in the navigator's pencil." Still, a prototype was ordered. Built in secrecy in a furniture factory in Hatfield, Hertfordshire, the first Mosquito flew in November 1940. It was lighter than any other bomber, sleek, stripped down, and when test pilot Geoffrey de Havilland Jr. pushed the throttles forward, it leapt skyward like no British bomber before it. At top speed, it hit 380 mph, faster than a Spitfire Mach V. The RAF couldn't ignore it anymore. As German raids battered British cities during the Blitz, the Mosquito was rushed into production. But it wasn't just a bomber. It was everything. Reconnaissance, night fighter, pathfinding, precision raids, photo intelligence. It was a modular masterpiece, adaptable to every role the RAF could throw at it. And while it lacked armor or guns, it had one thing no German pilot could counter: speed. A ghost with Merlin engines, one Luftwaffe ace called it. Even when loaded with bombs, the Mosquito could cruise at 23,000 feet and still outrun a Biene von Nuss in a shallow dive. The Germans responded by launching interceptors from closer airfields, assigning more fighters to each bomber corridor and increasing radar coverage. But none of it mattered. By the time their fighters arrived, the Mosquito was gone, a phantom in the clouds. It raided Berlin over 200 times. It struck Hamburg, Cologne, and even Gestapo headquarters in Oslo. It dropped bombs through slits in fog and over targets picked out by moonlight. German flak crews dreaded the sharp buzz of its twin Merlins, not because it was loud, but because it came and went before they could fire. Every missed intercept was a propaganda defeat. Every successful escape a reminder. The Luftwaffe no longer ruled the air. April 20th, 1944. 24,000 feet above the Ruhr. Oberleutnant Hans Keller squints through the canopy of his Messerschmitt Bf 109 G6. He's climbing hard, climbing fast. Berlin Command has scrambled 3 interceptor pairs to chase a flight of fast-moving bombers headed west from Dusseldorf. Not Heinkels, not Lancasters, Mosquitos. He levels out at 26,000 feet. Visibility is good. Clear sky, broken clouds. And there, just ahead, he sees them. 2 dark specks streaking toward the horizon. Keller throttles up. His DB605 engine groans under strain, pushing him to the edge of stall speed in thin air. He arms his nose-mounted 20mm cannon and prepares to dive. But the Mosquitos don't bank. They don't evade. They simply pull away. Faster. Higher. Gone. Keller curses. He pushes into a shallow dive, gaining airspeed, but the wooden bombers are already past the limit of engagement. His guns stay cold. His canopy glass fogs with sweat. Back at base, he files the report. Unable to intercept. Speed estimate, 300 mpm/80. No damage inflicted. That same day, RAF Mosquito squadrons attacked chemical plants in the Ruhr and photographed rocket sites along the Dutch coast. No Mosquitos were lost. For the Luftwaffe, these encounters became routine and demoralizing. Yet after night, German pilots scrambled. Night after night, they failed. The WWII, a powerful radial-engined fighter, had better armament, but couldn't climb fast enough to reach the altitude where the Mosquitos cruised. Radar-guided night fighters, like the Ju-88C, could sometimes catch them, but only if they anticipated the exact route and altitude. And even then, one mistake in vectoring or a late scramble meant the Mosquito slipped by again. Even when pursued, the Mosquito wasn't helpless. Some variants, like the FB Sox, carried 4 303 Brownings in the nose and 4 20mm cannons in the belly. They could strafe airfields, trains, and even enemy air traffic control towers. Other models carried rockets beneath the wings, turning them into anti-shipping predators. In early 1944, a Mosquito fighter-bomber patrol intercepted a formation of Ju-88 bombers over France. Within minutes, 2 German bombers were on fire, and the Mosquitos vanished back into the clouds without taking a scratch. Predator. Phantom. Pioneer. By the middle of 1944, the Mosquito's kill-to-loss ratio was better than almost any other RAF aircraft. One squadron recorded over 600 missions without a single aircraft lost to enemy fire. The numbers humiliated the Luftwaffe, not because of the destruction, but because they couldn't touch it. Every wooden bomber that returned to base was a reminder. The Reich's airspace was no longer secure. The skies belonged to a new breed of bomber, one that didn't crawl behind box formations or bristle with gunners. It flew alone. It flew fast, and nothing could catch it. February 18th, 1943, 11:00 a.m. Berlin time. The Reichstag echoes with leather boots and ceremonial brass. Inside, Joseph Goebbels prepares to deliver a fiery speech, one that will echo across occupied Europe. Nazi ministers, military officers, and propagandists are in place. The microphones are live. Radio towers hum. Outside, stormtroopers stand at attention in snow-covered streets. But they're not alone in the skies above the capital. Unseen, unheard, a formation of 4 Mosquito B-Meg-4s has crossed into Berlin airspace at treetop level before climbing, fast and steep, to 23,000 feet. Their target, the radio station transmitting Goebbels' speech live to the German people and occupied territories. Precision, not saturation. Speed, not volume. At exactly 11:01 a.m., as Goebbels steps to the podium and the Nazi anthem begins to play, the first bomb falls. A second later, another follows. The Mosquitos streak overhead at 300 dynami. There's no time to sound the air raid sirens, no time to scramble fighters. The radio signal cuts. The speech is silenced. Across Germany, radios go dead. In Paris and Oslo, in Prague and Vienna, German citizens turn knobs and bang radios, but all they hear is static. For the RAF and Allied command, it was a symbolic masterstroke, a psychological blow, delivered at the speed of sound. It wasn't just an air raid. It was a statement. The Mosquito didn't just destroy equipment. It shattered illusions. No city, no matter how deep in Germany, was safe. No speech, no matter how rehearsed, could escape Allied reach. No propaganda could shield the Reich from the truth screamed by Merlin engines. And it wasn't the only strike. Mosquitos returned to Berlin again and again, often flying in pairs, dodging radar corridors and flak zones. They dropped bombs at clockwork timing, sometimes precisely 11 minutes after hour, just to mock the enemy's inability to react. One of the Luftwaffe's top commanders, General Josef Kammhuber, privately admitted that the Mosquito posed a unique and unsolvable problem. No matter how many night fighters he deployed, no matter how much flak he coordinated, no matter how advanced his radar nets became, the Mosquito was always gone by the time they arrived. It had become more than a plane. It was a myth, a phantom. To German civilians, its arrival was whispered like a curse. The wooden lightning, it's back. And to German pilots, it was something worse, a reminder that their dominance in the skies was vanishing. Late 1944, German airfields across the west. The snow had begun to fall, blanketing the concrete with silence. But beneath that hush lay frustration, exhaustion, and fear. The Luftwaffe, once masters of blitzkrieg air support, now fought a desperate losing war in the skies. Fuel was scarce, pilots were green, maintenance crews were overworked, and night after night, one aircraft continued to hum through their airspace, untouched. The Mosquito. It was striking deeper, flying lower, and vanishing faster than ever before. It didn't bomb cities indiscriminately. It picked them apart. One radio tower here, a Gestapo office there. Bridges, rail lines, radar sites, airfields, all sliced away with surgical fury. The Germans had nicknamed the B-17 the Flying Fortress. But they now had a new name for the Mosquito, der schleichende Tod, the creeping death. In 1944 alone, Mosquito raids crippled dozens of German command centers and heavily disrupted their night fighter infrastructure. One infamous operation, Operation Jericho, saw a squadron of Mosquito FB-66 blast open the walls of Amiens prison, allowing French resistance prisoners to escape before their scheduled execution. The precision, the daring, the speed. It was unlike anything seen in bomber warfare before, and it struck at more than steel and stone. It struck at the psyche of the German war machine. Göring, once the architect of Luftwaffe supremacy, was reportedly enraged. At a 1943 Luftwaffe conference, he ranted, "I turn green and yellow with envy when I think of the Mosquito. The British, who can afford aluminum better than we can, knock together a plane out of wood, and it outruns or anti-dodge anything we have, flies as high as it likes, and comes and goes as it pleases. They have the geniuses. We have the nincompoops." By the war's final year, the Mosquito wasn't just a bomber. It was a dagger in the back of the Reich. Its night fighters were protecting bombers over Berlin. Its pathfinders were lighting targets for mass raids. Its intruders were strafing Luftwaffe airfields just before takeoff, sometimes even catching German night fighters warming up on the runway. It flew over 28,000 missions across every theater of the war. In the Pacific, over Burma, from Malta, over the Bay of Biscay. No aircraft of its kind had that kind of reach, that kind of adaptability, or that level of sustained success. When the war ended, it had the lowest loss rate of any RAF bomber in the European campaign. Not bad for a wooden aircraft the Germans thought would break apart at the first burst of flak. May 8, 1945, RAF Station Whiten, Cambridgeshire. The war is over. The hangars are quiet. A line of mosquitoes rests under the dim, golden haze of a spring evening. Oil drips slowly from warm engines. Ground crews move carefully between the aircraft, not with urgency, but with reverence. Flight Lieutenant Tony Morgan, now 25, walks beneath the wing of the very Mosquito he flew over Berlin 2 years ago. DZ-413 is battle-worn, but intact. 72 missions, 0 hits. Her wooden frame still smooth, her engines still deadly. Behind him, the base loudspeakers crackle. Unconditional surrender of all German forces. Cheers erupt from the barracks, but Morgan doesn't cheer. He simply exhales, long and slow. The war in the air was never just about bombs. It was about belief. And the Mosquito had shattered the most dangerous belief of all, that speed alone couldn't win wars, that bombers had to be brutes. That armor was better than agility. The Luftwaffe entered the war believing in force, steel, gun turrets, and swarms of fighters. The RAF answered with something different, something no one had predicted. A wooden aircraft, glued and bolted in carpentry shops across England. An aircraft with no guns, no armor, but with the heart of a predator. The Mosquito was not the most famous aircraft of World War II. It wasn't the most photographed, but it was everywhere and nowhere. It dropped bombs on Berlin, but you never saw it coming. It strafed a convoy and vanished into the sea mist. It flew reconnaissance over Normandy the night before D-Day and was gone before the guards looked up. Even after the war, its legend only grew. Air forces around the world adopted it. Pilots who flew it spoke of it as if it were alive. It handled like a fighter, hit like a bomber, and survived like a ghost. It made the Luftwaffe afraid of the very thing they once mocked. The Mosquito had become proof that genius doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it hums low in the distance. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it's made of plywood. But when it hits, when it strikes, it leaves a scar that never fades. And for every German pilot who once laughed at the Mosquito, there came a day they looked up, saw the shadow overhead, and stopped laughing.